Hello, and come join us in our not a review, but a Girl in the Spider's Web discussion. We're Jim and Sam. The way we like to do things here is that we like to give a recommendation up front, not really a review, it's just our personal feelings when we get out of the film, first and foremost, and then we have a discussion that stems from our recommendation. I don't know what Sam's going to say. She doesn't know what I'm going to say. So with that said, Sam, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. 3, 2, 1. Wait for it.
Wow.
It hurts to say it. It's so painful. It's so painful. Because I'm such a fan of the franchise.
I'm so surprised by you.
Like, I love the Swedish trilogy. I love the David Fincher remake that they did of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. And this one just... It's there. It's okay. It's not terrible. But it is disappointing considering how much of a fan I am of the franchise. But, you know, we're going to get into it. All right? Welcome to the show. This is 10 Minute Takes. All right, so The Girl in the Spider's Web. This is essentially the 5th girl film that's been made. They did a trilogy in Sweden. They did a remake with David Fincher, which also took place in Sweden, but it was in English. And now they've done The Girl in the Spider's Web. I've seen the original trilogy. I've seen the David Fincher version. I love all of them. I know the second two, in like numbers 2 and 3 in the Swedish trilogy, aren't people's favorite. I believe they were made for TV, so the production values were a little lower than the first one. But even with that said, I still loved that series. And with this, they got rid of David Fincher, from who made the remake, the American remake. They hired Fede Alvarez, and he got a whole new cast. Fede Alvarez, I was actually sort of excited for this film because Fede Alvarez's last film was a film called Don't Breathe. And Don't Breathe was amazing. It's absolutely stellar. If you haven't seen Don't Breathe, it's the story about this group of kids that go rob this blind old veteran's house, and he turns the tables on them, and then there's some twists and turns. Super good. It was one of my favorite films of that year, and so when I found out he was hired to do this one, I was super stoked. I was like, yes. If anyone other than David Fincher is going to do this, he's probably the man for this job because of his hard-hitting ways, what he does with his directing and his films, because he doesn't pull punches. Because Don't Breathe is a hard film. That was tough to watch at times. So, with that said, that's the background with this. They also replaced Rooney Mara. Yes, it was Rooney Mara. I get the Mara sisters mixed up every once in a while. But Rooney Mara, she was the American version of Lisbeth Salander. They replaced her with Claire Foy. Claire Foy is having a hell of a year. She's having a hell of a last couple of years. She is also... I felt like she was a great addition to this franchise. She is great as the Queen. She was great in First Man that we saw earlier this year.
She has a very wide spectrum right now with we saw First Man a couple weeks ago, and then we saw this, and I was pretty amazed by the switch that she was able to do from the First Man character to playing Liz. So I thought that was really cool to see.
Yeah, it was cool to see. She's really good.
Yeah.
So with all that said, I had actually really high expectations, even though the trailers didn't blow me away. I was actually highly anticipating this because of the talent both on screen and behind the screen. I thought that they would be able to hopefully make one of those films that where the trailer doesn't really do anything for you, but they make a film that actually, once you actually see the film, you're like, oh, that was actually amazing. Didn't hit me that way, but that's okay. But anyways, let's get into the discussion. That was a little bit of background on this film. I want to get into the actual discussion. So I mentioned it earlier. This is the... actually I didn't mention this earlier. This is the 5th film in the Girl franchise. This is an adaptation of the 4th book. So the books go The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, The Girl Who Played with Fire, The Girl Who Kicked a Hornet's Nest, and then The Girl in the Spider's Web. Now, with this being the 4th adaptation, or the adaptation of the 4th book in this series, Sam, do you feel like that this is a film that you need to have seen the previous films or read the books to understand and know what's going on in this film?
Well, okay, so I have like 2 answers to that question because that was kind of 2 questions. The first one was no, I don't think you needed to watch or read any of the books to be able to understand what's going on in Liz's life in the movie, because they do quite a bit of good background catch up that you see her as a child that really captures why she is the way that she is and how she kind of developed into the job that she turned into. However, what you were saying is one of the things that I had a hard time with was that I did get confused. I don't know if reading the book would have helped the confusion that I had in the movie.
All right, now for me, I didn't feel like I needed to know the backgrounds of the other films going into this. I felt the plot was fairly straightforward. I felt like all the information that was given to me was singular to this film. I didn't feel like there was too much I needed to know from previous films, and having seen the previous films, there's not much outside of the father storyline that is in the previous films that would translate to this one. And with that said, I felt like they did a good job with that.
So, what did you think of the plot of the film?
Ooh, the plot. So this is where I have a couple takes on the plot. One take when I was walking out of the film was that. All right, so the trailer is really vague what this film is, right? So you don't really get a grasp of what this.
You keep saying that you didn't like the trailers, but I was actually excited because of the trailers.
I was honestly on the opposite end of the spectrum. I wasn't excited about the trailers. I thought the trailers were okay.
I was really excited about this film because of the trailers.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. But for me, the plot of the film. So what the film is that Elizabeth is hired by a weapons developer guy. He made like a computer program where you can launch nuclear weapons from any computer on the planet as long as you have the activation code for it. He sold it to somebody. He feels like he made a mistake. He hires her to hack their system to get it back. When she hacks her system to get it back, she then gets the system taken from her from a terrorist organization that is then trying to sell it to their own buyer. And essentially what the plot boils down to is then Elizabeth needs to get that back from those people that are trying to sell it to somebody else before.
I feel like the whole film is starting to connect its pieces for me now. Like, oh, I get it.
And so with that said, Elizabeth then is like in a race against time to stop like the end of the world before someone can launch these nuclear weapons to burn Earth to the ground.
Yeah, that went way over my head.
So, and for me, like the plot, I guess, is kind of exciting with the stakes, but man, I felt like they went down like James Bond territory with this for me. Like I felt like she made it. You essentially just took like James Bond out of a James Bond film and put Elizabeth Salander in this with like her story, with her trying to stop like the nefarious terrorist organization, and then it gets even more like James Bond when you realize the connection, especially like the last James Bond movie, which was Spectre, which was James Bond's relationship with Blofeld in that film, was kind of similar to Elizabeth Salander's relationship with.
I don't really remember Spectrum.
Well, it's very similar, but even then, it was still enjoyable. It was like a middling enjoyable. It wasn't like, oh, it blew me away. It was just like
it had various moments of excitement, and then once those excitements were gone, I was fine with that. But I will say that I enjoyed some of the action sequences, especially when she's on her motorcycle.
That was cool.
There was a sequence there that I really liked. That was my favorite scene and takeaway from the film, was that I thought the action sequences were really well. I didn't make that connection because I don't really care for James Bond's movies, so I don't think I would have paid enough attention to a James Bond movies to make that connection. But I thought that the movie had its moments. I just didn't think that it was like overly exciting as I kind of wanted it to be.
So what did you think of the sister coming back into Elizabeth's life and her connection and how that drove the plot? Were you like me, where you're like, that well, I already made the connection for me, kind of like James Bond-ish. But what was that like?
What did the sister have to do with James Bond, though? I don't get that.
Oh, because Blofeld is James Bond's brother in Spectre. So James Bond's brother was plotting against them.
That's what you're talking about. See, all these James Bond references are going over my head.
So Blofeld was James Bond's brother in Spectre, and it turned out that he was the one orchestrating all these terrorists against James Bond.
Okay, so what did you think about her whole storyline and her coming back into Elizabeth's life?
Are you asking me, or is that me asking you? What's going on here? I don't know what's happening.
We're stuck on a loop. I can't figure out what we're talking about. No, I just thought that it was kind of confusing when she came back into her life. I thought that she was like, I knew she was trying to get her and kill her, but I didn't know why.
Well, I don't think she was trying. Well, that is kind of confusing now that you bring it up. I don't know if she was trying to kill her, but it's like she was kind of trying to kill her, but she kind of wasn't trying to kill her.
And then she saw her, and then they had a moment, and then she does her thing, and it's just like, I don't understand what her purpose was, except for to bring like emotions from the audience for that connection, for that like sister connection of like, oh,
yeah,
they miss each other.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm a little confused on, not that you bring up the sister, their sort of like relationship and conundrum. I'm a little confused on that aspect.
Like, was her dad some kind of crazy?
Well, I think their dad
gangster
was
boss. Like,
he was. I think he was. He ran like I don't know if it was like the Russian mafia.
So
but
why is the Russian mafia after Lisbeth too? Like,
well,
so many people are after Lisbeth. Like, I
Yeah.
kind of am starting to feel bad for her.
Yeah, the sister. I believe what it is that this sister. We're gonna get into the spoil. This is kind of spoilery. So if you're watching, and you want to be spoiled, then don't watch. But hopefully you've seen the film, and that's why you're here for the discussion. But so I think the sister took over the dad's organization when the dad died. I'm just as confused why
I didn't even know the dad died.
Yeah, the dad died, and she took over his business. And when she took over the mafia business, she herself became sort of a terrorist mafia. And I'm not exactly sure, because of the sister's relationship with the father, I'm not sure why she'd want to take over his business, because she hated him.
So, you know what? Going back to your first question about if you need to read the book, the more I think about it, the more I'm realizing how much stuff went over my head. And maybe that would have been caught up if I had read the book.
Yeah, because the dad's a major part of the second film, 2 and 3. But to me, all this stuff is just in dialogue. Like, she's like, oh, the dad died when I was so-and-so. I took over the business at so-and-so.
Right. Yeah.
But it's stuff that you just need to listen for the dialogue. It's not stuff that they show you. You got to listen for it.
So, out of all three of the films, even though this was like a soft reboot, which ones were your favorite? The foreign films from Sweden, or the American version of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, or this one? Which I feel like we can just kind of wash this one away. Like, we're not going to say this one, but like, out of the foreign films and this one?
This one's not my favorite. I would say it's my third. So I like the two. Right. My number one's the David Fincher Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. That's my number one.
See, I really like the foreign one.
The foreign one's really good. The
Swedish ones were really good, especially the first one, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, the first one.
The original one.
I remember very vaguely seeing that movie and enjoying it very well. And I remember going into that film and you being like, this is all in captions. And I was like, I don't want to see this.
Yeah.
And then when we went in, I actually really enjoyed it. So I have to say that the foreign film from Sweden was really my favorite. I guess
I'm just going to guess that there's probably a bunch of people on your side, because the original Swedish version it's really tight. It's a quick watch. The only thing against it is that it's subtitled. It's Swedish, and it's
but I actually enjoyed that about it. It gave it it gave it like an extra charm, or like a style. It gave it a style.
No, I agree with you. Foreign films, when they're done really well, are masterfully done, and that's like, one of the foreign films that's masterfully done.
The first Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and then the American version of The Girl in the Dragon Tattoo are my first two favorites of all of them.
Yeah, mine's David Fincher. It's the original Swedish one, and then it's Girl in the Spider's Web.
Right.
Now, I didn't hate the Girl in the Spider's Web. I know I was harping on it quite a bit, but it's a competent film. It's got I didn't feel like it was an original plot, but it's essentially the Elizabeth Salander character in a plot that I feel like we've seen before. But because I like the Elizabeth Salander character so much, and I felt like she was well written, she was well acted.
Yeah, Claire Foy really did a great job portraying her and keeping that personality of Elizabeth alive. Yeah.
So it is enjoyable. It does have some twists and turns. And for that, I mean, I do recommend it. I think it's worth a watch. Honestly, every film I think is worth at least a watch. That's why I don't really consider myself a critic, because I think every film should be watched at least once. That's why we see so many movies, because I think every movie's worth...
That is why we see so many.
Because every film's worth watching at least once.
You have to
at
see
least
them
once. You
all.
got to give it a chance. You have to. You can't...
well, that's debatable, but okay.
No, I just feel like before you'd be like, that film sucks, you have to watch it. You can't say a film sucks if you've never seen it before. It's just not allowed. It's not in my... I can't do it.
Well... Okay.
So, this one is... We saw it. I'm glad we saw it. I'm a big fan of the franchise. I'm not sure if there's more books. I think there is. And from my understanding, I think they wanted to launch a new trilogy with this on the cheaper side. And I think that's one of the things that... Like, it looks a little different from the previous one, because the previous one, the David Fincher version, is like a $150 million movie. I think this one was done for like $50 million. And so you can kind of see the production value difference in the cinematography, the coloring, the sets. Everything's kind of like a step below that.
Yeah, I see.
It's for $100 million difference between the two films. I could be wrong. Maybe it's less. Maybe it's more. They did a really good job with what they had. And in fact, that's kind of like the story of this film. They did what they could with what they had. And I hope if they do another one, if they make enough money to do another one, they can then do even more. I hope they can take it to the next level. Is that it for you?
That's it for me.
That's it for me. This was our, not a review, but a Girl in the Spider's Web discussion. Hopefully you joined along. If you jumped in the comments, let us know what you think of the film. Join in, respond to some of the questions we had for each other. Let us know what you thought. So thank you for watching, everybody. Like and subscribe if you liked this video. We have more coming. We've got Grinch and Overlord.
Grinch. What are we doing next? Overlord or Grinch?
We got Overlord next. So we're doing those next. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you next time.
Oh, you're wearing a spider shirt. Did you do that on purpose?
Oh, no. Look at that. Hey.
Spider! Even though it's Spider-Man, but...
That's okay. Girl in the Spider's Web.